Good evening. Welcome to the Cortez City Council Special Meeting Workshop. Tuesday, December 14th, 2021 at 6 p.m. I call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the Fire Department presentation by Fire Chief Jay Balfour. Good evening, Jay. Are you all set?
We are all set, Mayor.
Okay.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mayor, Council, City staff. Thank you for this opportunity to make this presentation to you this evening. Myself, Fire Chief Jay Balfour, Battalion Chief Charles Borden, and Lieutenant Rick Spencer will be presenting this together this evening. First, we'll briefly discuss the history of the Cortez Fire Department. It started as a volunteer fire department in 1886 when bucket brigades were formed. In 1910, it was established by the City of Cortez that the Cortez Fire Department will be recognized and funded through the city. In 1986, the Cortez Fire Protection District was established by the voters of the district, which covers 162 square miles. And the way our court decree and service plan read today is still the same as it is or was in 1986. From 1886 until 2008, the fire department was all volunteer. There were no paid personnel. In 2008, the first full-time fire chief was established, and we also began to establish paid firefighters throughout the day to handle the increasing call volume and the dwindling ability for people to leave their jobs, the volunteers. As you can see, our current staffing is 5 personnel per day and 1 chief officer. So Chief Borden and I share that responsibility of the chief officer, and we have 3 shifts that cover the 48-hour tours that they currently run out of Station 1 located at 31 North Washington. As you can see, the call volume has increased over the years, and currently today we sit at 3,035 calls for service. You can definitely see a significant increase in from 2010 to where we are today.
Good evening. Above you can see a list of our apparatus that we have. Excuse me. We run frontline and reserve apparatus. Of our frontline apparatus, we have an engine, a light rescue, a ladder truck, a brush truck, and a tender. The rest are reserve. The important thing to see here is that for our frontline apparatus, the national standard is that after 10 years, those be moved into reserve and replaced with new apparatus. And then after 20 years, the reserve apparatus have to be taken out of service completely. As you can see, all but 4 of the apparatus are older than 10 years right now. And we currently have 5 trucks that exceed the 20-year replacement standard. This is an example of the 4 of our trucks that exceed that standard. You can see on the left side there the approximate cost of replacing each one of those. That's actually, so literally we did some research, and those are very close numbers for what it would take to replace those. Of the 4 in that picture, one of those, a ladder truck, is actually a frontline truck. This is a list of our typical calls for service. In our fire category, that includes house fires, brush fires, vehicle fires, that sort of thing, EMS calls, excuse me, or any medically related calls. Hazmat includes fuel spills, gas leaks, CO calls. Technical rescue can be anything from a rope rescue, confined space, or a very complicated vehicle extrication. Public service calls include things like installing smoke detectors or, excuse me, assisting people to get into their cars, or we actually had a lady that dropped her keys down into a sewer grate, and we helped her. Assisting other agencies is typically where we stand by while the law enforcement has something going on that could be life-threatening, and we stand by there to provide medical attention if something goes wrong. And then mutual aid is where either we go help one of our neighboring departments or they come help us. Right now, mutual aid calls, we've given 7 of those year to date, and we've received 8, so that's pretty par for the course. One of the things to remember when we're talking about call numbers, the Chief talked about our total call volume. One of the things that we've discovered is that they don't just come sequentially. Almost 40% of the time, our calls come at the same time. Often we'll get 3 or 4 calls going on at once. And so we'll have one crew doing one, another crew doing another, one chief doing another, and another chief doing another. And if we get a certain type of call in the middle of that, like a fire or hazmat incident, then our companies, that requires more than one company. So we have a lot of people tied up there, which is why our staffing is so critical. Okay. And then finally for me, the additional services that we provide, as you can see, we have CPR and first aid classes. With each one of those, we also add a Stop the Bleed class. We've reached 474 people so far this year, including most of the school staff and the Sheriff's Department. We do monthly blood pressure checks at the Senior Citizen Center. Fire safety education, we provide age-appropriate literature and pencils and pens and cool things, and then our crews actually go to the schools and do a presentation at the elementary schools. So we've reached 1,157 kids that way. We received donations of smoke detectors from State Farm and the Red Cross. We've installed 248 of those so far this year. We've done 3 fire extinguisher trainings. Our wildland crew assists folks if they ask for assistance with controlled burns on their property. We've done 31 of those, and we have the cool big green reflective address signs, and we've distributed 42 of those so far.
Where we are currently, our firefighters are some of the busiest in the state of Colorado, running an average of 181 calls per year per firefighter, and that's a little bit skewed because we have a couple of our firefighters that individually have run over 600 calls this year. Our firefighters are some of the lowest paid, as you've seen in your packet with the spreadsheet that shows what our average annual income is for our firefighters. They start at minimum wage. We operate an annual budget of $1.69 million. Approximately 85% of that is spent on wages, benefits, insurance. And then the other 15% of that goes for the very little bit of capital improvement that we're able to allocate. It goes for fuel, maintenance of vehicles, annual testing requirements, and a little bit for training and just the general upkeep of all of our facilities, personal protective equipment. For a set of turnouts to the structural gear that outfits one firefighter is $3,500 just for one set of gear. This is a spreadsheet that we conducted a survey back in September. We completed the results the beginning of October and put this together. The primary questions asked were full-time, what is your full-time firefighter staffing, your annual firefighter pay, and then your average square miles, or your coverage area, pardon me, in square miles, and your annual budget. And then we determined what the average annual pay was per firefighter, and then the cost per call, and then the calls per year. The cost per call, as you see, we're the cheapest deal in the state. That's not necessarily a good thing, though, because sooner or later that's going to become an issue for the fire department, as it is today, and that's why we're here to make this presentation to you and see if we can hopefully fix the direction that we're currently headed in.
Good evening, Council and Mr. Mayor. So what we need, we as a department, we need to meet the minimum standards for equipment, gear, and apparatus replacement. We need to be able to recruit more employees and retain our current employees, and then improve our ability to provide a progressive and professional service to the community, and continue to train our employees to a higher level than the minimum. We have minimum standards that everybody has to meet, and we're all there, but due to our budget, we're not able to send people to additional trainings like we would like to, and that the people want to go to. So how do we get there? We get there with your help. We'd like to establish an IGA with the City of Cortez and provide some of these things for the City of Cortez. We'd like to provide fire hydrant maintenance. We'd like to staff Station 3, which is the station out on North Dolores Road by the golf course. We'll provide a fire inspector for the city. The 2 EMTs for the CIP program that was just approved and will start in January will take on that financial burden, and we will pay for those EMTs. And then in June of 2024, or by June of 2024, we'd like to staff Station 2, which is down at G and 160. With that being staffed, though, we're going to have a dedicated ARF certified firefighter which is an airport rescue firefighter for the city of Cortez's municipal airport down there. We can achieve this if we can agree on an IGA and have a sales tax of approximately 0.093 or 9 cents for every $10 spent. So why a city sales tax? Historically, fire districts in our area have increased funding by raising the mill levy with voter approval for the property owners within the fire district. The problem with that is it puts 100% of the financial burden for funding on just the property owners, when there's a lot of people who come here and utilize our services, and there's some property owners who rarely utilize our service. So Cortez is unique because we have a large tourism attraction or tourism attractions in the area. A sales tax would put the financial burden on everyone who comes to and spends money in the city of Cortez. An example of these would be, on average, the 558,000 people that visit Mesa Verde National Park every year. And I know on the 23rd, Ms. Medina, you mentioned that the tourism has tripled since 2019 to the visitor center, but so it's going up. There's a lot of people that come here, McPhee, Phil's World, Mesa Verde National Park, hunting. They're coming here, they're spending money here, they're utilizing our services. So how to benefit you? A sales tax will benefit not only the citizens of Cortez, but everybody who lives in the fire district and those who visit. Benefits for citizens of the fire district would include faster response times, decreased homeowners insurance rates, and the peace of mind to know that when we respond to your time in need, we'll have the equipment that is up to date and operational to help you. However, like mentioned before, the financial burden will be placed on everybody who comes here and visits here, not just the property owners. One thing that I want to add just right here real quick is I did some surveying, and I don't know if you all know, but Walmart is a $90 million a year store. So they're a $270,000 a day store. So that's where some of this would come from. And with that, do you have any questions for us?
I have a question.
Yes.
Thanks for the presentation. If we do move forward with trying to get this on the next ballot, what kind of education or what do you have in store to try to educate the community on this measure so that you could try to help its chance of passing?
We actually have discussed that frequently, and we have a plan to go speak with every civic organization in the city or in the community, as well as the county. I've had a discussion with the county manager already, Mr. Powers, and he's agreed to support us on this. We'll also go in door to door, and we've got a person that, public information officer, that's very well versed in posting information on Facebook, our website, as well as creating flyers. She actually created the trifold flyer that a lot of this information came from, and we just updated a lot of the information, and that was done a year and a half ago. So essentially, we're going to get out and host events at the fire station. We'll go stand at Walmart and City Market and Safeway, boots on the ground, if you will.
Will there be like a couple of public meeting opportunities for folks to attend?
Absolutely. We've discussed that at the fire station. We'll probably have public meetings at the station, and then hopefully with the opportunity to collaborate on this sales tax through the city, we would be able to hold a public meeting here as well.
Jay, I see where the number of calls seems to be increasing every year. What do you think is the reason for that? The population, or do you have any thoughts about that?
Mayor, I believe it's a little bit of everything. I believe it's population growth. I believe it's the amount of people that come into our community on a daily basis. I believe it's the tourism, as Lieutenant Spencer alluded to. The health, I believe the health of the community, or the health of our nation in general, is starting to prevail in that regard, because we see a lot of people that have chronic health conditions that we respond to, whether it's a diabetes or COPD or cardiac or metabolic situation. And real quickly, I want to state that we have trained 2 of our EMTs into the paramedic level within the last 18 months, and they're really doing an awesome job of providing that upper level, that advanced life support care, if you will, on the calls. And it would be our goal to, it's my goal to achieve a ALS person on every apparatus that we would staff 24/7. One thing I would like to add real quick, and it'll be my last comment, is the reason for the sales tax is, in coming to the city, is the Special District Association of Colorado does not permit us to implement a sales tax. So that's why we need to collaborate with the city and partner up, hopefully.
I just had a budget question. So you said, or at least in the packet, that the current budget is about $1.6, $1.7 million a year.
Yes, sir.
What would you anticipate if you were to have the sales tax? What would the fire district budget go to?
From the information we can obtain from the state on projection, it would be right around 4 million, maybe just a little over, but it's just a rough estimate right now that it would go to 4 million. So there'd be approximately 2.5, maybe a little more that would come from the sales tax, but that's not concrete right now because we just don't have, good factual information that we
Yeah, because I just did a kind of quick calculation just based on our 22 budget and what we expect what we expect to get in sales tax, and I was seeing somewhere between $2.5 and $3 million. That's about what we are looking at. So the other question I did have is, is there some flexibility in that number, the 0.93? Just one of the concerns that I do have is between the fire district and the county, also talking about a pretty significant sales tax. If it were just the fire district, that puts us right just below where Durango is, but if both the county and the fire district were to pass, we would be almost, I think, 1.8% over where even our neighbors are.
Yeah.
So that would be the concern that I have along those lines. So I was just wondering, budget-wise, do you have prepared kind of current budget as well as a budget if this were to pass, what it would look like?
Yeah, at the 0.93 and my estimate at 2.5, in the staffing model that we showed you with Station 3, Station 2, the full build-out, if you will, in 2024, the annual wages and benefits package would be $2.5 million. So
Okay.
then, of course, we could implement the 1.5 for capital improvement, the operating capital, if you will, for the district.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to give my thanks to the fire district. Several years ago, I smelled gas leak in my house, and I called the fire department, and within minutes, they're at the scene, and they investigated and checked the heaters and the gas connections, and it turned out the wind was blowing the fumes back down into the house. It was just an odd wind, but I really appreciate the effort that you took to check everything and give recommendations and even add, locations for the CO2 and fire smoke detectors. And you folks were right there, and when we needed you, and I just thank you so much.
I have kind of a general question. Maybe it's actually for Mike Green, or maybe Linda might even know. Have we done this in the past where the city of Cortez would put something on the ballot in a partnership sort of arrangement with, okay, is that?
This is something new. This is something new, and I admit, I think in speaking with Mr. Sanders, we need to sit down and really research this and make sure it's doable. I think there's already Councilman Dobry's pointed out some potential consequences. There's a lot more to this than just collecting a city sales tax and giving it to the firemen, which is basically what I think they're asking us to do is to increase our sales tax and dedicate that percentage to them. I think they're right statutorily. The statutes don't allow special districts to have a sales tax. I remember school districts looked at it because it would have been neat for them, and they couldn't do it. So if they want a sales tax, it's us or somebody else, the county, could do it for them. But there's a lot we need to look at before we make a recommendation or yay or nay or anything. And I am unaware of any past history where the city has done this for another governmental entity.
Do you mean do you mean our city specifically or cities in
Our
general?
city specifically, I suppose somebody else has done it in some form, but I don't know that either. There's a lot of research to do here.
What's the absolute time frame that we need to get that information and make a decision by so that they can move forward?
Actually, rather soon. It's after the first of the year. I'm not sure what our election deadline is, or ballot question deadline is.
Yeah, this would have to be read at first reading January 11th. We can't, we only have 3 weeks till the ballots will be done. So for our that's for our April election. If you want to put a ballot question on the November election, we would have to do an intergovernmental agreement with the county to be on their ballot in November, but our election in April, this would have to be on first reading January 11th. And second reading January, whatever. The ballots are ordered like February 3rd. So.
If I may, a couple points here. I know that the state would have to receive information on the request for a sales tax increase by into January. And I know that the city of Durango has a sales tax for the Durango Fire Protection District because the city of Durango Fire Department, Hermosa Cliff, and Animas Fire Protection District became a fire authority, if you will, in I think it was 1999 or 2000, and now they've gone through all the different avenues, jumped through the hoops and votes and everything, and now the entire area is now known as the Durango Fire Protection District, and part of the sales tax does go to the fire district every year. So I'm not sure how that works out, but I know they do that. And then we've also spoke with our legal counsel. I just had a conversation with her today, and their Special Districts Association legal counsel, and they're more than willing to. In fact, they're working on the draft IGA right now, and what basically a draft ballot question would look like on that. And so I would like to say that we might have some wiggle room in that number. Absolutely. I'd like to sit down and possibly with the finance director, and we can, hammer out some solid numbers and see where we can go. But and it's very possible that we could move down from there.
The one other quick question I had is the fire protection district's boundaries. Is it City of Cortez? I mean, is it City of Cortez, or are you kind of an extended special district beyond city limits?
Extended. So we cover the City of Cortez. We go down Road G to the Utah state line. We go boundary flows along the Ute Mountain Reservation property, along Mesa Verde National Park, out here to the rest area east on 160, and then it kind of jogs back around, up around Road 32, Road P, jogs up to County Road R, across the R to 25, and then back down the center of Road 25 to County Road M as in Mary, and then all the way back out to the state line in Utah. Okay. And that's where the 162 miles comes from.
Gotcha. Okay. So, but since any potential sales tax would have to flow through the city, it would be tied to the city boundary, not your boundary. Is that correct?
The sales tax would, yes, sir.
The sales tax would only be collected in the city because...
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Yeah. Thank you.
Mayor and council, if I can jump in for a moment. So part of why we're here tonight is we've got to open the conversation on this. I mean, looking at their financials, they're sinking, and rather quickly, by the way. And the community that they serve ours and the greater community out. If we don't jump in and start helping, and I'm not saying it necessarily has to be us, I think it's a good choice to be with us. I think we as a greater community are in big trouble here. Nobody doubts that they are an essential service that save lives regularly. So that's part of why we're here today. That's part of why we're in a workshop, is so we can at least start the conversation.
Start getting us information about whether, like, how it would look and how it would work.
Will do.
Yeah, there was a lot of data that you guys had, and I thought your presentation was really good. I agree with Councilman Yazzie that, it'd be getting out there and selling it to the public, and I believe you guys are probably the best face for that, honestly. We all know if it's not us, some people here have seen me in my underwear at 2 o'clock in the morning putting out a fire in my backyard. Thank you very much. But I think at least a few of us have probably at least had a neighbor or someone that you've, touched their lives and literally saved their home, and you did that definitely for me. And there was some data, like that 10-year spread from 2010 to 2020, going from 1,300 to 2,700. That more than doubling is incredible in a 10-year period. And I, was sitting here trying to think, like, what could have accounted for that, but it's really staggering, and it's really made an impression on me, your presentation and that data. So yeah, I hope as well that we can kind of look into it in all seriousness, and the time frame, I think it sounds like, would be the biggest crunch at this point. So thank you guys for making the presentation today.
Are you guys ready for that timeline? I mean, is that what you expected? Okay.
We're ready to do the work to get on that timeline. We feel like it's beneficial. The fire district will cover the expense of that piece of the election, and we'll take care of all of that. And I'd like to say that we definitely plan to market this, let people know, leave no stone unturned, or no door knock that we didn't knock on, and we'd hopefully like to walk hand in hand with the council on this, as well as different city staff, because I feel like it does impact all of us.
Then are we going to have time? I mean, do we have to kind of make a decision tonight?
No.
Or can we wait for information and then make a decision on the 11th?
We need more information. It would be a mistake to try to make a decision tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Get all the info first, because you make a decision tonight, it might haunt us later.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Well, thank you so much, Jay and firefighters. We really appreciate you, and we'll really do all we can to help you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time this evening, and have a good evening, and Merry Christmas to everyone.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the discussion on marijuana regulation changes. City Attorney Mike Green. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening. This discussion in part has been delayed for a while. We've just sort of been putting it off. And recently, in October, two of our licensed dealers requested some changes to the code for their specific needs. So we started to look at this and see if it needed to go a little broader. There is an interest in allowing non-Colorado residents to own marijuana businesses in the city of Cortez. It is allowed by the state, and it's allowed in a way that seems to read to the extent that that other rules and regulations don't require that it be a Colorado resident for granting a license, then it's okay. If they require Colorado residency, then you would still require it. So what we'd like to do, if that made sense, is go with the state on that and allow non-residents to own marijuana establishments in Cortez unless residency is required by the state. That's a simple fix. It appears that this entity has already received approval from the state to have an out-of-state owner. I can't really go into the details because this would be a change of ownership, which is a quasi-judicial matter. So I can tell you that it appears there should not be a problem with doing it this way. We would be relying on state regulations. And for that particular change, we would have an ordinance to you if you say okay on the first meeting in January. The second one is actually a little easier and less complicated. If you remember during the COVID, liquor stores and pot shops got some special treatment from the state so they could stay open. And one of the things they got was windows, service windows, walk-up windows. One of the other facilities had a I don't remember whether they had one or not, but I think they did. They would like to have it again. The reason they can't is when the emergency ended, walk-up windows, the other windows, and some other things also ceased. Checked with staff on both of these, and the police department's here and they can speak. I've got Noah Herman, the enforcement officer, the compliance officer here, and the chief is here. They don't seem to have any problem with either of these happening. I don't believe we had any bad incidents when we had the windows before, so this is something staff recommends we do. While we're doing this, and this was the reason you got the book, there's a lot of changes have happened in the marijuana statutes. Some of it's just simple jargon. Some of it is definitions and methodology. And what we'd like to do is get more consistent with the state rules and regulations using their verbiage, making enforcement by the state easier in Cortez so they could take a more active role and we wouldn't just have to have our guy doing it. We'd also, we'd be consistent. Over the past couple years, we've had some arguments with council on what does this mean, and well, it means this in the state. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that in Cortez, or the words are different. How do you translate them? So what I would like to do for the 11th is go through and change some of the jargon that's in our existing code, organize it a little better. It's a little non-user friendly in the way we've set out the requirement section. So again, that was why I gave you a lot of these things to look at, just so you could see what we'd like to do. There are a couple other things that I don't expect you to want to give a go-ahead tonight. I think you might want to need some more information. There's a couple new classes of license, but the one that might the city might want to know about, I don't know that it's a good idea or a bad idea, is what they call hospitality licenses, where there are sites or places, they're both portable and permanent. When we initially passed the marijuana, it was called a smoking club, and those were problematic. When we did them, when we looked at them before, there were some building code situations because of odors passing through walls, filtration systems, electrical, things like that were problematic. They're basically a place where people can consume marijuana, either buying it next door. I'm not sure you can buy it at the same location. That's something I was a little unclear on. But, and there's food available. They're kind of like a bar for pot. No alcohol would be served, and they get away with being able to smoke indoors by the Clean Air Act. Doesn't apply to them because they're marijuana, not tobacco. The portable ones have some different rules and regulations, but that would be, people could say there was an event, I'm not sure where, because all the public property prohibits possession and consumption. But wherever there would be, say, a big field and people were having a music festival and they wanted to be able to consume pot, people would bring this trailer on with minimal filtration, and you would buy your minutes to go in and use your product and then go back to the music festival. I think the police department and I probably don't think that's a good idea for Cortez right now, but I'll let them speak to that. The other thing that came up, and I've been told this is probably not a good idea either for safety reasons, is deliveries for medical and or retail marijuana. That's a bit problematic because it's a cash business. You start figuring out where people are delivering to, because these folks would be rather regular, sort of like Domino's for pot, marijuana. And that has some problems with both the chief and Noah Herman, the detective, can give you. I don't expect an answer on either of those tonight. We can get you more information on them, how they work. But I would like authorization to get an ordinance together for you for first reading on January, it's the 11th, to authorize non-Colorado residents to be licensed or to own marijuana facilities in Cortez, and or to authorize windows, walk-up only. I'm told the drive-up is not a good idea. It might be unsafe, but ask the experts. And then to reorganize, I think it's Chapter 4, the retail and medical marijuana sections so they're easier. I'd like to get one section with the requirements for both in it, and then one section for retail and one section for marijuana, and move forward with that. Are there any questions?
I've got a few, Mike. So this out-of-state license ownership, it would be for new and existing locations, is that correct?
Yes, sir. The current situation would be a change in ownership. Say I owned a store and then you bought it from me. It's similar to this. One of these entities is being taken over by another. I shouldn't be taken over. It's merging with another entity that is out of state, and so it requires us to change our ordinance because we require Colorado residency for 2 years.
So as an aside, do we have locations that are still available based on the restrictions, you know, schools, other pot shops, et
Matt,
cetera? I know.
Council, you asked one of the questions that's been asked for the last 4 or 5 years, and every time that number seems to grow. I think there's 1 or 2 spots available, but they may or may not work due to highway access and other things. Newview is not up and running yet for whatever reason. I don't think it's as easy as it was in the beginning for non-marijuana related reasons. And so I think there might be 1 or 2 left. I understood there might be 1 left down on South Broadway, but beyond that, somebody would have to come and ask, and I'd have to look at it. I think we're down to 1 or 2 spots is all that's left.
Okay. I just wondered, that sort of framed it just in terms of somebody from out of state coming in and applying for, you know, new building or new location, kind of what was left. And am I right that we still do have caregivers that should never be named, but those are the people who typically would deliver marijuana to a medical patient?
No, the way I understood the delivery and is I could have a car and I could deliver pot just like Domino's Pizza. And you would contract with me and I would be I'm not sure I'm bonded, but there was restrictions and there was rules I had to follow, and it's documented. And I don't know if you could make money doing it. The store might if they were doing it, but
I just have one more. Sorry. Would the pot bar, whether it's permanent or mobile, it would follow then the same restrictions in terms of zoning and the distance factors and all those sorts of things?
That one is a much more complicated process to get into because when I chatted with Ms. Hughes, it came to light that, yeah, we might have to look at zoning. We might have to look at land use regulations. We talked about this when Sam Proffer was the planning and building director and the building official, and he saw significant challenges for ventilation, significant challenges for exhaust, creating fumes. It almost looked like you would have to build a new building or find a building that wasn't hooked up to another building that had some airspace around it. I'm not clear if that's still true given the technology advances, but there was a lot of other concerns to the hospitality.
I have a few questions then. I guess in terms of hospitality, what would the difference be between like a hookah bar, which exists in Colorado, and this kind of consumption on site, in terms of infrastructure? And then as for like delivery, wouldn't you need a license like the people who do that work at the shops? And would you be delivering in town limits or would it be countywide?
You would only be licensed by the city of Cortez, let me go backwards, for in-city deliveries, because that's the only area we control. As far as I know, nothing is legal in the county regarding marijuana commercially now, so I don't think you could go out into the county. The hookah bar versus the pot, I think there's a lot more rules and regulations at the state level are going to go into a pot marijuana consumption facility because it's marijuana. There's going to be, I believe, surveillance. There's going to be accountability. There's going to be a lot more than just bringing your tobacco into a place and being allowed to smoke it. I think there's going to be restrictions on amounts on people. There's concerns about when people leave, driving, walking, those kind of things, the increased amount of law enforcement time it may require for that part. So there's a lot more to the marijuana hospitality on the surface that we need to look at and make sure we make it, get you the correct information. But there's a lot more rules and regulations to it than just a place for consuming tobacco.
And I'm sure the packet, the booklet that you gave us has this information for us to read.
It has some of it, and we'll be getting you some more.
Okay.
There was a lot more I was originally going to put in, but it was confusing, and it was not really where we were headed. But we will get more on the hospitality. But I think that's also, we're going to have to amend the land use code to talk about it because it's not currently considered. That's going to involve a P&Z session. That's going to involve planning and zoning. And like I say, I don't know that you need to decide on it tonight. A matter of fact, I think we should get you more information. And then I'd like you to hear from Detective Herman and Chief Knuckles as to what they think about that before we decide. I'm only really looking for authorization to make the changes to the ordinance to allow for the two requests and to get the language more in compliance with the state language for the first meeting in January. I think we need to have some long, hard discussions about hospitality bars. I'm not sure they're good, bad, or indifferent. I'd like to get some research from other places that have them, especially the law enforcement part.
Well, so to limit it to what you're asking for in January, throughout the COVID emergency, were there stores operating walk-up windows?
Yes, sir.
There were, okay. And
I think they all almost.
they all did? Some
no,
of them
but
did?
there was 3, 4.
We only had two.
Okay.
Live well and chronic.
I just wanted to check in with both Linda Smith and Chief Knuckles. Were there any policing issues, any licensing issues, any sort of issues regarding walk-up windows, whether through theft or anything like that, that we should be concerned about?
Long walk for no. No, there were no.
I was going to ask, how many requests that we had from out of state?
This is the first one we've had. We've had inquiries before, but we've let them know we have the 2-year Colorado regulation. But this is the first time that we've had one that's going through the process. So we've never had anyone go through the process to go through another state with ownership. But yes, we've had inquiries, just no one completing the paperwork, and they have completed the paperwork.
This would also coincide with, if you've noticed, we're allowing in Colorado right now at some level in the state publicly owned licensees, meaning you could have a corporation with shares or publicly traded. I'm not sure how that's going to work. There's all this federal state stuff, conflict, legalese, philosophies, but that's the other reason to look at the non-resident status. At some point, we're going to have corporations with shareholders owning these facilities. So I don't think it's going to create issues or problems, at least the way it's being intended and posed to us.
So they have the right, let's say somebody comes in and buys 3 or 4 of them, they have the right for that?
You can only own one retail store.
Okay, thank you.
Unless you're changing that, we're not changing that.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say. That's what I thought, that they can only have one license
Yes.
per person. I didn't know if they're from out of state, they can come in and buy everything else, a franchise.
Okay, you can only own one retail store.
I would be fine to see that ordinance at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for supplying all this information, and we look forward to more research into this subject.
So we'll get you some more filler for your book.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the Municipal Court report. Municipal Court Judge Beth Padilla. Good evening, Judge. Thank you for joining us.
Hard to hear me with the mask, so I'll remove it as I'm here. I just have a brief update in order to provide some additional information to council. So first, this week marks my 4th week on the bench. Things are going well. I have no problems to report this evening, which is good. I would like to let you know that from my perspective, the Municipal Court is working very well. Both Carla Odell and Pam M. are fantastic. No concerns whatsoever. They're extremely organized. It is a well-oiled machine. I did ask Ms. Odell to go through our cases for this year to determine how many are alcohol-related. This is a concern, you may recall from my interview. Of the cases that she reviewed, which I'm extremely grateful to her for doing, I think she went through each file and pulled out not necessarily whether the charges were alcohol-related, but whether the allegations include alcohol. So we may have someone charged with trespass, but they're intoxicated. In her review, 43% of cases involve alcohol in the municipal court this year so far. Less than 1% have an allegation involving drugs. So we are seeing alcohol as a major concern, which is what I thought would be the outcome of that analysis. I have some specific information from Ms. Odell about our case filings. Overall cases we have fewer this last year and in 2020 than we have in the past, and that is due to COVID. I was not on the bench at that time. This is just what Ms. Odell has told me, but essentially the jail was closed for some period of time, and I think that impacted how policing was occurring, and really just society has been a little off in the last year or two. We are having court every Monday morning. Typically that's lasting about 2 hours. I'm also available multiple other days throughout the week in the event that individuals are picked up on bench warrants. I will let you know that I am issuing warrants if people do not come to court. That has not always been the practice in my review of the files. The intention is to get them into court so that we can address whatever issue is bringing them into the court. And that is specifically on the criminal cases. Most of what we're hearing are criminal cases at this time. I've also asked the court staff to review what we have in outstanding court costs and fines. At this time, we have $8,672 in outstanding court costs, $5,597 in outstanding fines, and a little over $3,000 in restitution. With Mr. Sanders, we've been exploring ideas for collections, including a link on the website so that people can pay their court costs or fines by clicking through. We're also throwing out ideas like perhaps having a court cell phone that you could text individuals with a link, and again, they could just click and almost do like a Venmo concept. In all candor, a lot of our cases, we're not going to get the court costs and fines. Our individuals just don't have the ability to pay those, and so I am taking that into consideration on the bench as to whether to assess court costs and fines. Essentially, if good cause is shown, if someone is not working or they've recently lost their job, I am open to waiving those. Court costs are $32 per case. Those court costs go toward the bridge shelter, the DARE program, and Mr. Sanders could tell me where the rest go because I don't remember. But we're not talking about, hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars per court case. Since being on the bench, I have put forth some sentencing guidelines so that there is some idea as to what can be expected. I will let counsel know that I am currently requiring mandatory jail for indecent exposure if a child is present. The rationale behind that is the police reports I'm seeing are members of our community, parents, calling law enforcement and providing details of individuals exposing themselves while urinating at the duck pond, around groups of children. This is not something that I think has malice. I think it's typically individuals that are highly intoxicated. And so from my background in child welfare, I just think it's inappropriate for individuals to be exposing themselves around children. So there is a mandatory, just 1 day jail sentence, and I shouldn't say mandatory, that's the guideline. If there's some good reason that can be presented to me as to why someone is unable to go to jail, maybe they're gonna lose their job, or there was some very specific reason as to whatever happened in the park, certainly open to modifying that guideline. For alcohol-related offenses, typically what's been happening is there'll be a 5-day suspended jail sentence on the condition of no new violations for 6 months, so basically don't get in trouble again, and you won't have to go to jail. That will continue. However, one change is that if there's a second offense within 2 years, there will be a 10-day jail sentence, 8 days will be suspended with 2 days in jail. And I've already started ordering individuals to receive a substance abuse evaluation. In all candor, I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if it's going to be successful. I don't know if it's going to be a barrier. I've been asking individuals if they have Medicaid, and if they do, telling them where they can get an evaluation in town with a Medicaid provider. So essentially what we're doing is saying you have 90 days to submit the evaluation. We don't have probation. We're not set up to monitor ongoing treatment. But my hope is that some of the individuals that really need it will at least make an initial contact with a substance abuse counselor so that if they decide they want help, they can move forward. We're just not set up to require them to do that long term. But already I have, in court, a family member of one of the defendants was literally cheering as she was ordered to do a substance abuse evaluation, and he said, this is what needs to happen. I don't know if they're going to do it. We'll see. But I'm going to try, and we'll go from there. In addition to the sentencing guidelines, we have changed that juvenile cases will be heard separately. Those cases will happen 8:45, so kids can get to school by 9 or 9:15. I don't want them in court all morning with adults. It's inappropriate. It's not permitted at the state level. They need to be in school, so there's no reason for them to sit through a 2 or 3 hour docket when I can get them out the door by 9:05, and they can report to school with a tardy. I have been in discussion with Mr. Sanders as well as Carla Odell trying to understand who is paying for jail costs. My intention is just to understand what the budget looks like so that I am not sentencing people in a way that is going to be a problem for the budget. So still working on some of those numbers. And finally, I have reached out to local schools and offered the municipal court courtroom in the event that they do mock trials or if they just want to come see the courtroom. I think any partnership that we can do with especially our middle school and high schoolers is beneficial. I have heard back from SWOs as well as the high school that they are interested in that. And Mr. Sanders has been extremely supportive of that plan. I don't think it will really be any additional work on our end. The courtroom is often not occupied. So those are the updates from Municipal Court. I don't know if any of you have any questions.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for the great updates. Really appreciate that. I'm curious what the numerator and denominator were for that 43%.
Yeah, so of the cases that Ms. Odell calculated, there were 137. 59 were alcohol related and 5 were drug related. You know, honestly, I don't know that that number is the same as total filings. It looks like, and I have a few different charts that she's made for me. For the criminal filings to date, it looks like it's 184, so we may be missing 50 cases, or perhaps they're calculated differently. I'm not exactly sure. So far, it looks like citations filed in the municipal court are 361 for the year.
Okay, and then another question that I have, and I don't know how it would work in practice, but I think about the opportunity for like interception, right? And you were saying how if like kind of pointing individuals in a direction if they have Medicaid to go to this provider. Is there any way we could have a provider that's like contracted or something like that directly with the court so that they can, that provider can directly call them? Because I know that I've told people, oh, if you just go here or if you stop by here, and there's never a follow-up. So I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know how it would look in practice, but if there's a way we could close that gap and make it so that it's guaranteed that there's at least a phone call made and the likelihood of there being follow-through can be higher.
Absolutely, I think that's certainly my concern. And so in this case, one push in the right direction is they're gonna go to jail if they don't do the evaluation. So that should help, maybe. It may not, I don't know yet, I don't have the data. Long-term, I would love to seek grant funding for some sort of partnership with a local agency that could provide treatment. I know that I'm only 4 weeks in, so I'm not drafting any grants, and I'm not moving in that direction yet. I'm still trying to compile the data and understand where we are. I'm also interested in trying it like this because it's what I have, to see if it might work. But yes, ideally, I would love to have a substance abuse counselor in the back of the courtroom that I could point them, like, there's your person right there, and they'll schedule an appointment. I think it's a funding issue. But long-term, I think that would be a really good next step.
And then I have one more thing, and then I can pass it to everybody else. I would maybe encourage you to also reach out to School Community Youth Collaborative. It's a smaller group of kids, but they do life skills and stuff like that, and that might be like mock trial or whatever you said might be something of interest to them.
Thank you, I will do that.
Yep, thank you.
One of the issues that we had talked about was seeing the same people over and over and over again. Do you have a sense of what that looks like? What percentage of your docket is really the same population, the same people that you're seeing?
I don't know
frequently?
yet.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured.
You know, there are certainly individuals that are on a first name basis with court staff, so I know they've been there a few times. I don't know yet exactly who the repeat visitors are, although I have just this week asked Ms. Odell, and she's already doing it, to print out individuals' e-force. So it's essentially this database that we have that shows us their criminal history. And so those are now being inserted into my file, which is helpful because then I can determine how frequently they've had alcohol issues or what other cases or contact with law enforcement they may have had. And that'll give me, I think, a better idea of who's a repeat visitor and who's maybe there for the first time.
Judge, I have a question. I see where alcohol-related offenses are majority of the cases. Are there any cases that are specifically marijuana-related, to your knowledge?
I have a list. trying to recall, I don't believe that I have had any. I don't think so.
Okay.
It's a lot of open container, possession of alcohol in the park, and a lot of trespass. A lot of our individuals, it's not uncommon, they will have been trespassed from every grocery store in town, a couple gas stations.
Right.
So lots of trespass, some shoplifting,
Right.
but I don't recall seeing marijuana violations.
Okay, thank you.
In regards to recouping costs, I think it's a great idea to be able to pay online, because as someone who's gotten several parking tickets somehow, I would definitely have paid them quicker if I could just do it online instead of writing a check, dropping it off somewhere. So I think that's a great idea. And I really appreciate your thorough presentation tonight so we can understand the courts more.
Absolutely. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Okay. We have time for a general council discussion. Are there any items that the council would like to discuss tonight? Hearing none, I adjourn this workshop and we'll reconvene at 7:30 for our regular